Welcome, everybody. Good evening. Dave Walker here with the B to SMB Institute. And, back at our Leaders Forum in July, we felt the need, felt compelled to have our first ever panel on diversity in the B to SMB space. And frankly, we were talking a lot about diversity or the lack of diversity that really exists in the leadership ranks of a number of the enterprises that are part of this organization. And it was hopefully an eye-opening experience. I know for many, it was an eye-opening session of really frankly the deficit that we run as enterprises and not having greater diversity. But today I asked this group to assemble to really talk about driving a diverse recovery. As I think we've all heard, unfortunately this pandemic revealed a lot of deficits that really impact the minority communities and impact urban areas, really somewhat egregiously. And I think that it's important that as all of us are trying to figure out how to help drive a small business recovery across the US, that we really do it with an attention to diversity on a sustainable basis. So with that as an introduction, I would like to introduce this very esteemed panel that I am very happy decided to stay up late and end their long Mondays with, or Tuesdays rather, with a conversation about this pretty heavy topic. So first I'm going to kick it off with Melinda Emerson, my good friend. How are you, small biz lady?
I am good. I am good. I bring you greetings from the great state of Pennsylvania. I am, really excited always to talk about ways that we can grow America's small businesses. As the small biz lady, my mission is to end small business failure. And my other job is as the president of Quintessence Group. We are a marketing consulting firm that works with large corporations that target the small business market. So I'm about all things small business, and I've written a couple books. The latest one is Fix Your Business, a 90-day plan to get your life back and reduce the chaos in your small business. So that's my story.
Excellent. And you're one of the most important small business influencers out there. You have an audience of over 1 million
Yes.
small businesses, which is nothing to sneeze at. And you do them a great service, I know.
Thank you.
So next, Ziamar Pena.
Hi, good evening. Ziamara Pena. I'm the Vice President of Engagement for Small Business Majority. We're a national nonprofit small business advocacy organization. Essentially, we work as a 501c3 to support small businesses via policy, our research work, and our education work. Inclusive economies and ensuring that small businesses are at the forefront of policy solutions, and especially those needs of under-resourced small business owners, is what we intend to do and what our work has been over the last 15 years. We've had the pleasure of working on important issues like access to capital, healthcare, retirement access, paid leave. I mean, all of these issues that disproportionately have an impact on Latino and Black business owners and those businesses owned by people of color. And so when we think about the work that our organization has been able to do in partnership with a number of different groups across the country, we're really thrilled to participate in this discussion today, as we're also looking to present policy solutions for these communities to rebuild a better economy tomorrow.
Terrific. Derek Peoples of the American Independent Business Alliance. Greetings, sir.
Hello. Thanks, Dave. Thanks for inviting me. And Derek Peebles. I am from Cincinnati, Ohio, and I'm the executive director of the American Independent Business Alliance. And we were founded in 2001 really to build a movement that supports the development of locally owned and independent businesses. So over the past 20 years, our partners and ourselves, we've helped form or grow more than 60 independent business alliance. We call them IBAs. And they're geographically dispersed around the country. The IBAs count for about 20 to 30,000 local businesses as members that are united in support of protecting local economies. And so we've promoted the terms buy local and local first, and we've really played a key role in helping those concepts and that language really become prevalent across the United States.
That's terrific. And last but not least, Mr. Jeffrey Wright.
Good evening, Dave. Thank you. My name is Jeffrey Wright. I am here in Chicago, Illinois, braving the cold October. Very grateful to be here on the panel. I appreciate it. My business is Gold Leaf Capital Partners. And, you know, you hear a lot about the difficulty that small businesses have, particularly minority small businesses, in getting access to capital. It can constrain your growth. It can affect your decision-making. It just really can hurt your business if you don't have access to capital to grow. And so Gold Leaf Capital Partners really focuses on addressing that issue at scale with businesses around the country. So we work with over 200 lenders around the United States. And we really work with the business owner to help them understand what they really need in terms of financing. My background, I was a commercial banker for about 10 years before I started this firm. And I speak banker, and I know what bankers want to know and how to approach a banker and how to ask the right questions and how to get your deal closed. And so, you know, we work with the business owner from start to finish, helping them figure out what to request from the bank, how to best position themselves, and then we work with them through underwriting and closing. And usually after that, we can serve as outsourced CFO advisors to help them continue their growth plan and execute their strategy.
Awesome. Welcome all of you. Again, as I said, I'm very appreciative of you being here. So let me start out by asking the swing for the fences question. Xiomara, tell us, what do you think are going to be the critical success factors in driving a diverse recovery across the U.S. for small business?
Well, I think it's been referenced already. You know, access to capital is an incredibly important gap that we have to solve. I mean, even in the federal stimulus packages that we saw as a result of providing support for small businesses, you know, many small business owners, especially those owned by people of color, were unable to obtain the capital through the federal Paycheck Protection Program, or were underfunded or had their credit ran in order for them to become eligible. And we know that folks will continue to need access to capital. Small Business Majority just today did release a survey where we found that without additional funding, about 1 in 3 or 35% of small business owners will not be able to survive the next 3 months. That number is higher for small business owners of color, with an astounding 41% of Black and Latino owned businesses that say that they won't make it through the next few months. So we know that that's going to be a critical piece. And beyond this crisis, I mean, the reality is that a lot of business owners of color may be unbanked, may not be able to, with their traditional lending relationships, access the small dollar capitals that they're looking for, loans of under $150,000. And so community development financial institutions, investments there in CDFIs play a critical role in as we think about a pathway to a sustainable recovery that is inclusive of everyone and doesn't leave businesses behind. I think another issue that is going to be critical is addressing some of the debt that folks will take on as a result of this this pandemic. So debt relief programs are going to be critical. We know that business owners are also looking at potential bankruptcies as a result of some of the losses that they've experienced or declines in revenues that they've experienced over the last few months. And more importantly, the role that corporations play. I mean, one of the things that we did see is a lot of corporate partners step up in the last few months through their giving to resiliency funds or grant programs. Grants were incredibly instrumental for small businesses owned by people of color. We're talking about debt-free relief. At the first place, I mean, I'm gonna actually just end my remarks here because I know that this would be great to get other folks' perspective.
Yeah.
But the
No,
debt
I
relief
think
piece is
you've laid
incredibly
out some
important.
really good ones, and I knew this was going to happen. I'm tempted to jump to all of you at the same time, so forgive me. But let's rewind a little bit to the access to capital. And Jeffrey, there's nobody more better positioned to. Oh, Melinda wants to say something. So Melinda, say something, and then I'm going to go to Jeffrey.
I think Zamara is exactly on point with what she said, but I want to go further than, access to capital is an issue, but I believe that credit reporting in America is the problem because credit reporting has become a proxy for race. And we know that the way African American and Hispanic communities were redlined in the 80s had a lot to do with what your credit score was determined by your zip code and not necessarily your spending habits and your bill paying habits. And that has continued to follow people. And it is really, I believe that banks, CDFIs, everybody involved in lending is really going to have to figure out another way to evaluate risk other than credit scores. Because at this point, because of COVID, all of 1 in 5 small businesses is not operating and assumed dead. So that's 7 million business owners. So now you have all these other people in corporate America about to get laid off and lose their jobs too between now and December 31st. So you got all these people who their credit is going to take a hit. So are these people now unworthy? Are these people lowlifes that don't pay their bills? No, people do not have bad credit scores because they don't believe in paying their bills. People have bad credit scores because they didn't have enough money to pay their bills. When you have, so there's just lots and lots of stuff out here. But I think the credit scoring program is really where we have to go to if we're really going to cure some of this access to capital issue.
Okay, point well taken. So we've got access to capital, credit reporting. Jeffrey, you speak banker. What do you think in those two things as part of a solution to build a diverse recovery? What's your take?
I would love to talk about my take quickly, but I just need to echo Melinda's point. I've had business owners that we work with that have, businesses that do 5 million in revenues, $1 million in profit, and they have a 610 credit score because in building their business over the past 4 years, they missed a couple mortgage payments. They don't have safety nets. They don't have family support, as unfortunately a lot of, minority entrepreneurs have trouble with this. And I've seen deals get declined. The money's there. They're clearly good operators, but because of their personal credit score, they get denied access to commercial capital. And it's absurd and it's obscene. And so Melinda, I hear you, and I really want to echo that. I think, business owners who got left out of this last round of PPP funding should really take away the importance of having a banking relationship and having a good understanding one-on-one relationship with your actual banker. And if you're at a big bank and you don't know who your banker is, it may be worth switching banks. So many people got left out of the PPP process because they didn't have a banker they could call that they could work with through the process to get the PPP funding. Luckily, a lot of those folks knew about Gold Leaf Capital Partners, and we did get a lot of them funded through our relationships with the bankers that we know. But if you don't already have a commercial credit relationship, you're largely left out when you really need the credit, right? So if things are going well, a lot of folks say, I don't need any debt right now because things are going well. I don't need any money. And they kind of look at commercial finance like personal finance, and it's very, very different. As you know, debt in your capital structure can, be the difference between growth and just being stagnant. So really developing a relationship with a banker is key, and now is the time to do it.
So Derek, I want to give you voice here of, you represent a broad geography of chapters made up of, close to 40,000 small businesses. What, from your perspective, what are you hearing as not just of recovery, what it's going to take to recover, but really what it's going to take to build a diverse recovery.
Sure. And so just to kind of piggyback on a lot of what's been said, from our perspective, we do see that capital for Black and brown business owners is an issue for sure. What we noticed during the stimulus package is that local businesses that were located in geographic areas where commercial banks are more prevalent got less help. And I think this goes back to Jeffrey's point on having a relationship with bankers, because what we did see was that local businesses that got better help and that got better resources out of PPP were located in geographic areas where community banks are more prevalent.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're really big on everything local, which also includes buying local and banking local.
Mm-hmm.
And so keeping your dollars in local banks, where we also saw a lot of our community banks that we have relationships across the country, especially in the Northeast, they were able to help a lot of minority owned businesses because they had that relationship. But it was very clear that our minority owned businesses don't have that relationship with commercial banks. And also when you're looking at credit worthiness, those practices need to be reframed as well. And so what we've noticed is that a lot of our business owners, our micro businesses, don't get loans or don't get help from banks. Generally, they may have a low credit score, but it's also about credit experience. And if you know, if you own property or if you have a mortgage, that's really what gives you the credit experience that people are looking for when it comes to commercial loans. And of course, if you miss a couple of mortgage payments, then you're kind of out of the water too. But a lot of our businesses didn't even get looked at because they didn't have the type of credit worthiness that is kind of prevalent today. And a lot of that involves having a mortgage. A lot of our business owners don't own their own homes. And so that was a big issue. I would say that what's really important for the recovery from our perspective is that consumers need to understand and realize the impact of spending their dollars locally. For every dollar that you spend at a local business, it creates $2 to $3 of economic impact that's circulated in communities. And so if you go back to the story of Black Wall Street, part of the reason why Black Wall Street was so vital and thrived is because the flow of the dollar circulated within that community of Greenwood 100 times before it left that community. The flow of the dollar doesn't circulate within Black communities, more than once or twice before it leaves. And so I think, consumer spending is really important to the recovery.
So that's a great point, and you guys are filling out the picture very, very well of what the problems are. ZMR, from your perspective, as you look at these different challenges that basically are going to shape the recovery for building a diverse recovery, are there public policies that help this, or is this more in the form of a recognition or a filling of the space as far as access to capital and the use of credit reports, how they're used? Does that come from fintech, the people who have already disrupted commercial banks? Is it public policy? Is it private sector? Is it consumer spending? Where do you think we can shape, frankly, the inequities that really are so obvious that you guys are describing?
I think, there's not one solution that's going to cut across to all of the different markets. And we're talking about self-employed business owners, which by and large, the Black community and the Latino community tend to have higher presence in and representation in those groups. We're talking about folks that may need to access an online lending type of relationship that serves as that gap funding before they develop a relationship with a large lender. So public policy is one piece of the puzzle, and we do that by, demanding more spending can go to small business development centers and other minority development small business centers that provide hands-on technical assistance for a lot of the communities that may need additional resources to be able to structure their business and build out their business plan. We look at additional funding for CDFIs. And so public policy is one prong, but the responsibility here, I mean, we even talked about consumer spending. That's another area where education can play a significant role in talking to folks about, 60 cents of every dollar will stay locally when you shop locally. So there's not one approach that will solve the dynamics of small businesses. I think we do this by research, public policy, and education. And our organizations, I think a lot of groups are one of the things that this moment is calling is for just a highlighting of the gaps that have existed for a long period of time.
I would agree with that, Dave. And the other thing I would say is that it's one thing to educate the public about local dollars and local spend, but I also think there's an education gap amongst entrepreneurs, right? Particularly entrepreneurs of color. There were a lot of people who were not able to access some of the PPP loan funding and stuff like that because they didn't have their house in order, right? They didn't have their paperwork in order. They weren't paying themselves with paychecks, so they didn't have a 941 to upload into the system to qualify for PPP loan funding. So some of it is there is a bit of an education gap around what people know about what they need to have. There's people that accept payments via Cash App and PayPal and stuff like this and don't have a business bank account. The other reason why people couldn't get access to some of the federal dollars is if you didn't have a business bank account and you hadn't had it in the time frame that they said, you couldn't apply for some of the support funding as well. And I mean, I think if we look at the fact that only 5.2 million entrepreneurs got PPP loan money out of 27 million, right? So it was a very small number of people who got money. So I think there's an issue around access to capital, certainly, and the credit scoring issue we already talked about. But I think there's an issue around business education, proper business education. And I also think there's just an issue around access to opportunity. Part of the reason why these businesses are smaller is because they don't get that many contracts. I mean, they're small. They need more opportunity. And I think we have to get corporations and city governments and universities to be a lot more intentional about, not just supplier diversity programs, but supplier development programs, and really taking on some businesses in their community and growing them on purpose.
That's terrific. So Jeffrey, I mean, build on that, because I think that, you're down doing hand-to-hand combat with trying to take your business clientele over the finish line, helping them do all those things. But are you confronting, as Melinda says, kind of just frankly, small businesses that you represent that are just used to doing it their way? They're not particularly certain that there is a right way to do things, or a way that probably more better said that they're supposed to do things. Is that what you're seeing? And I know you help them get over the finish line, but is there more work to be done?
There's always more work to be done, right? I think that I just want to make sure I clearly get the point across that, these minority entrepreneurs that we work with, and I'm sure the rest of the panel works with, these are really brilliant, hardworking people that understand things that I will never understand. I went to Harvard, I went to Northwestern. I could never remove asbestos. I could never run a 200 kid childcare center. I just could never do it. So I think these folks are not supposed to understand what CFOs understand. Mm-hmm. They're not supposed to understand how to speak banker, because usually a company has a CFO that does it for them. I think when you're a small company, you have limited resources. And, I think you're kind of just trying to make it happen every day. And I'm an entrepreneur myself. I mean, I started my company 4 years ago, and it was just me for the first year. and it was torture. I mean, it's really, really hard, right? So, I don't think there's any deficiencies. I don't think like, we just can't get it together. I think folks don't know what they don't know. And I think if you let people know, which we do a lot of through community outreach and entrepreneur outreach, you don't have to understand all 10 steps of the process and do it yourself, but you should be willing to work with advisors to help you get there. So having a good accountant, having a good attorney, if you don't want to, you can't afford and shouldn't have a full-time CFO, have a banker that will work with you or have a CFO advisor like Gold Leaf Capital Partners. I'm just saying that's another option for you. But I mean, you really just have to have a good team around you to focus on what you're not supposed to be really good at. A lot of our business owners are excellent at what they do. They just don't have the resources and the team around them to get to where they're trying to go.
So, Derek, I know that Amoeba did a lot in the early days of the pandemic, that first 90 days of trying to push out as much information as possible to be in the hands of those successful entrepreneurs so that they could navigate things. Give us some of the highlights of the things that you were delivering to your audience out there in 40,000 strong and through your chapters to try and educate them on the things that, and thank you for calling that out, Jeffrey. I didn't mean to imply that it was deficient as much as it was, and I think you can say this broadly across all small business, right, guys? I mean, small businesses should not be required to be a CFO, a COO, a CAO, a CRO, and all the other things that they're required to be. But that's kind of the nature of the beast. Derek, talk to me about what you guys were out there really supporting small business, the messages you were giving them.
One thing I would say, yes, and that's a good question. But one thing I would say is the narrative around the deficiency, I think, needs to change. We have to realize that Black and brown business owners, for the most part, are coming from a very strong disadvantage that sometimes is often generational. And so imagine, we're in this period where Black businesses are being started, whereas the counterpart may have had a business handed down to them with those financial resources, with that financial backing. And so we deal with a lot of business succession, where during COVID, we had a lot of business owners who retired and their next of kin didn't want the business. So they were able to form what you would call a community or a workers owned business, kind of like a co-op. And so we saw a lot of that happen, especially in the Northwest region for some reason, where you had a lot of people retiring and coming to us about business resiliency plans and succession plans. That was really important that we helped on very early in the pandemic for the businesses that just decided to kind of cut ties, retire. We worked with the American Sustainable Business Council on a real strenuous engagement effort to where we were contacting our IBAs, they were contacting their members. We were helping certain communities organize with their city officials to talk about what they knew about the PPP plan coming down in their local communities. And so we did a lot of that, particularly in Arizona and in the state of Wisconsin. We worked very closely with city officials in the cities of Madison, Wisconsin, and Phoenix and Tempe, Arizona, where we got their local governments to give to the tune of $10 million through these IBAs in the form of grants that went directly to businesses. And so we were able to accomplish that kind of within the first 4 weeks of COVID. COVID also brought a lot of racial unrest. So when the George Floyd incident happened, we had to dig really deep into ourselves and understand what it would look like to place racial equity at the center of our work as it pertains to growing the local economy movement. because although we focus a lot on businesses, we really understand that the community identities is what shapes the sustainability of a lot of these businesses as well. And so you have to focus on the community as well as the business. And that was really important during that time because there was a lot of riots and protesting in various cities, such as Louisville, where a lot of businesses got destroyed. And so those are a few things we had to deal with during the pandemic. But I would say on a advocacy level, we were able to work with a lot of our business networks to form state and local recommendations that state governments could take on. And then we also leveraged our partnerships to identify, out of what we learned on the state and local level, what type of federal policies could be enacted during the stimulus package process. And we actually got a lot done. I could say that, you know, we were able to be very influential in the second stimulus package process, of course, that Mitch McConnell never approved. So it's still kind of in limbo, but that campaign was called the Save Our Economy Now campaign. And we had some really good success with that.
Terrific. Ziamar, does any of your research kind of validate that minority-owned businesses have a disproportionately positive impact on their communities, particularly their communities of color, versus other small businesses? Is that a fair question, first of all?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Businesses that are owned by people of color tend to hire folks in the community that reflects that business owner's demographic, whether it's women hiring women, or Latino hiring additional Latino workers, or offering opportunity, or the Black business owners perhaps offering opportunities to folks in their communities. We tend to see higher incredible impact to workforce development. Additionally, I mean, it was referenced earlier, but if there are contracting opportunities, if you give one business owner that contract opportunity, even at a sub level, not a prime perhaps, but even at a sub, they may then be able to explore additional contracting opportunities. And that also adds a flow of cash to additional businesses that also may represent that demographic. Additionally, I mean, we see that business owners of color are incredibly impactful in the types of products and solutions that they tend to create. You know, women business owners, Black female business owners. I just got in contact with one that is, I think, the first wine producer in Oregon that's a Black female business owner. And I'm just like, first of all, ecstatic to be connected with, but second of all, it just demonstrates the power that once someone is able to structure their business, they're able to really take in a different direction. That means new jobs to the region. That means sales in terms of tax dollars to the local city. So there's a tremendous value. The value cannot be overstated. I mean, really, the fact of the matter is, when we look at the economic impact of small businesses, especially those owned by people of color, immigrants, women, et cetera, it's a huge impact to our tax base. It's a huge driver to job opportunity. Businesses tend to offer employment opportunities at higher rates. Maybe not in mass when we think about scalable solutions, right? If I have a small business and I'm looking to hire, I'm probably only filling one position, if that, in a given year, depending on where I'm at in my growth, versus like a larger company. However, those are still remarkable opportunities. I think one thing that I do want to just touch base on is the work that you were mentioning. I just want to talk about the flow of information was incredibly important, especially to people of color, to women, and folks that maybe did not speak English as their first language. These educational materials were critical to ensuring that folks were able to find the resources in a quick manner, whether it was the local grant that the city established through the CARES Act, or whether it was PPP funding. And so ensuring that the ecosystem, the network of groups that is on the ground supporting businesses, the chambers, the small business development centers, the nonprofit partners that are also trusted networks in our communities had the tools to share that information, played a critical role. And there are still gaps, and we need to continue to think about strengthening that ecosystem so that we can collectively drive an impact together, because one organization is not going to solve everything. But I think it's just important to recognize that our collective individual organizations were working to address the immediate needs. And I'm just incredibly excited about all of the work that we did during such an incredibly challenging time.
And for all of you guys, you really should hear the case of Xiomara's work in LA. I mean, it's pretty incredible. And she talks about that in a little bit in the session we have, really introducing small business majority to our audience. But Melinda, I've known you for a while. I know your whole mantra, your whole mission in life is you don't want to see any small business fail. What are the things that you are seeing, that you are doing, that you think are needed to not just save these minority-owned small businesses with capital and with a change to credit reporting, but really with their skill set, that can advance basically their migration into digital and so many of the other things that we know are going to be critical to small business success going forward?
Sure. Well, there's a couple of things that I'm involved in here in Philadelphia, but also I actually am going to be partnering with Babson College for a new program as well. I'm in the process of turning my best-selling book, Become Your Own Boss in 12 Months, into a 10-week online curriculum in partnership with Drexel University. And we're going to make it available to workforce boards across the country. We're going to start in Pennsylvania. But we know that all of these people that are losing their jobs, 50% of those jobs are not coming back, you know. So those people are going to have to become entrepreneurs. So we are developing a curriculum that will be, online and facilitated by an experienced entrepreneur, and I'm really, really, really excited about it because it's going to go online pretty soon. Also, too, Babson College has developed a 12-week accelerator program for African American women, and I'm going to be one of the guest lecturers and success coaches for that. And that program starts October 30th, and it's going to be their first cohort. But I think people are so excited about it, they got a waiting list already. From people from across the country. So those are two programs that I'm involved in that are going to be very specifically training entrepreneurs. But what I'm excited about is that there's so much more opportunity. We've been approached about developing stuff for returning citizens, ex-offenders, developing training materials for ex-offenders, developing educational materials for that critical 16 to 24 at-risk youth. I've been approached about all of these different audiences and developing additional curriculum materials for this group of people. And so that's what I'm busy doing. I'm building the curriculum. I'm writing the stuff. I'm getting it ready because I believe we've got to go all the way down to middle school. I think we've got to start teaching entrepreneur mindset earlier and doing it in a creative way that will get kids interested, and so that we can stop this massive dropout rates that we have in urban cities. I was very proud this week to find out that the National Principal of the Year was Paul Robeson High School principal here in Philadelphia, 95% graduation rate. And I was like, yes, you never hear about an urban school in a city like Philadelphia with a 95% graduation rate from high school. So there is hope, but we've got to engage kids where they are. And so we're doing some gamification. I mean, we're looking at all kinds of cool stuff to help kids know that entrepreneurship is a career path. It's not just about going to college and getting a job. So that's what I'm working on and some of the things that I see coming down the pipe.
That's terrific. So I want to kind of wrap by asking each of you, what can our audience of large corporations who, have frankly built their $1 billion plus businesses, selling to small businesses, and who frankly were, smacked upside the head in February and March. Geez, maybe we should actually do something to assist our customers versus just selling them a product. So I've seen a tremendous drive this past 6 months in a lot of enterprises trying to figure out ways in which they can help their community. Some of them throw money at it with lots of grants. Some of them throw it at it, by having kind of programs that are homegrown, that are, intended to be supportive. All of them I think are pretty genuine in the assistance that they want to offer. But how can our members help you specifically? So how can they help you, Derek, in what you do?
Sure. That's a good question. I would say, help sponsor our buy local campaigns. I really think that with the voice and with the power of the corporate community, they can really be an asset into increasing consumer spending among local businesses. And I think that works, that produces a better economy for all of us. I've already seen a lot of great programs that, corporations have been putting out in support of Black and brown businesses and giving money out in the form of grants, things that you've already mentioned, Dave. But I think, we need a mass. I think what COVID has taught us is that it's taught us the true impact of what a local business and the impact that they have on our economy. And so I think it's really imperative that consumers really start to understand the impact of their dollar. And right now would be a good time to do it because the holiday season is coming up. And so the best thing for our local businesses, especially the ones that are having to limit activity because they're brick and mortar stores, consumers can buy gift cards, to where they can redeem them at a later time if maybe it doesn't happen over the holiday season. These type of currencies, such as rewards programs and things like that, really help local businesses. And having, big corporations and bigger businesses really kind of push the envelope on that would be really great. And, we've had some success in the past, of course, with American Express, for example, with their Shop Small Saturday campaign. Those are the things that really kind of drive that consumer awareness out there.
Yeah, and Amex is illustrative of what can be done, but boy, wouldn't it be great if it was 365 days a year? That's I hear that all the time from small businesses. So, Ziamara, from your perspective, what can our partners do to help?
Yeah, well, one of the things that I think is important is funding, supporting organizations that are doing the work as well to support small businesses. And so that's incredibly important. We've been able to develop some programming in partnership with eBay. We know that expanding your digital footprint is going to be important. So we're also, always looking at creative partnerships and collaborations. I think one of the things that this is not specific to help supporting small business majority, but rather as a collective for the small business community, is thinking about enhancing or expanding accountability around procurement metrics. And this is just in general. I think that this is going to be incredibly important piece of the puzzle as we think about growing equity and centering equity in all of our work. And then I think the last thing I'll just say is, again, there are educational programs that are developed by the grassroots organizations working on the ground that know how to best serve the communities that they're working with. And so while developing partnerships and programs, and that's always incredibly impactful for groups like ours that are nonprofits that do work with small business owners.
That's a terrific ask list. Jeffrey, strong likelihood that Catherine Bertaglia, the co-founder of Cabbage, and Brock Blake, the founder and CEO of Lendio, and Ginger Siegel, the head of North American Small Business for MasterCard, are going to be watching this. So as a guy who speaks bank, and speaks lending. What can they do to help you?
Yeah, I think they certainly can throw money at it. I would never say that's not a good idea. There's plenty of opportunity to support small businesses through grants, through paying for education, et cetera. But I really have, 4 things that large corporates can do that work with small businesses outside of the lending industry. One would be to pay for education and capacity building for the small businesses that are your vendors or your clients. So, call Melinda and ask her to give her course to 25 of your top vendors and pay her to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, call me. You could call me too. But, other thing is to provide contracts. It's not hard to do. You're going to pick someone to do a lot of what's going on. Like, you're going to pick a vendor, provide contracts to minority-owned businesses, give really competitive payment terms to the minority-owned or small business. A lot of minority-owned businesses, a lot of small businesses, period, cannot wait 90 days. If
Right.
you really care, give them 15-day payment terms and pay them when you're supposed to pay them. And don't make it hard for them to get paid, right? Okay, I guess the last thing would be, take the risk to do more for MBEs. If your, stated mandate, I want to do 15% of my spending this year with minority-owned businesses, make it 30% through 2025. Make it 40%. And minority-owned businesses don't always have to be the subcontractor. Make MBEs the prime contractor on the contracts that you're submitting. I mean, they can do the work. A lot of them are well capitalized. A lot of them are, really good at what they do. And I think until you start to really see corporations make big leaps and take risks and make MBEs more prime and less subcontractors, I think you're going to see a lot more MBEs just do better and create more entrepreneurs of color around this country.
Those are great asks. Melinda, bring it home. What do you think?
Well, I think that there's a lot of need for education, and certainly on my company, I'm involved in a lot of that. I agree with capacity building, but I want to go even further. I really think that corporate partners need to get involved in supplier development, and it's not supplier diversity. It is very specifically supplier development, and I certainly work on supplier development capacity building plans. So I'm happy to work with any corporation to build a supplier development plan if they do not have one. I also think, and I want to co-sign on what Jeffrey said, you must pay your small business vendors before 30 days if possible. We are in a pandemic. People need cash now. And, a lot of times corporations are tempted to run things through agencies and stuff, and they never want to pay people on time. So just be cognizant of payment terms and just the contract terms that you're putting out there. And, support education, because I think that's a big issue. And I certainly applaud the corporations that have invested in grant programs, but I also want to caution them who they're giving money to. I've seen a lot of organizations that are barely legitimate, get $5 and $10 million to give away to minority businesses, and I'm going to hold my breath to see who actually gets the money. So just, in their desperation to want to look like they're doing something, please talk to people who know about the efficacy of these organizations before you sign up to partner with organizations who don't even have a membership, but now suddenly they're giving out money. So I think that has been a rush to do things, and I think some actors out here should not have gotten money who have. And so I think I want to encourage some of our corporate partners, call me, I will tell you who's legit and who isn't. So with that, I'm going to leave it right there.
I think that's a great cautionary message, because I think my peers would be the first to say there was a lot of kind of close your eyes, throw the money.
Oh yeah, and we see a lot of
there's
a lot of evidence of that out here. So,
Yeah,
I mean,
no
I'm happy
question.
to help with that
You
kind of
guys,
stuff.
you guys are my heroes. I mean, I'm so glad that we did this. I thank you so much for doing it. I don't, this is not the end of this conversation. I think I want you guys to, I want to figure out ways in which you can collectively and individually engage with our membership. Because I do think that as I've shared with Ziamara and with Derek both, that there is a screaming need right now amongst large enterprises, particularly in this small business space, who serve small businesses, for some guidance on how to lean in areas where they've never had to lean in before. They've never done anything like this before, really. I mean, they've kind of apportioned out, a little bit of maybe their foundation budget each year to address either women-owned businesses or minority-owned businesses, but they've never really faced this challenge of, wow, we have to help build a recovery. And by the way, we better build a diverse recovery. Not to steal his phrase, but we better build back better. So, not that I'm telling you who I voted for, but I think that's really a big piece of it. Derek Peebles, thank you very much for doing this, sir.
Thank you, Dave. It's been a great conversation, actually. So I'm looking forward to deepening that conversation.
You sounded a little surprised.
I'm sure all of us do a lot of these, but I've actually learned a lot on this conversation with the other panel speakers. So it's been great to be with all of you.
Well, it's great to introduce you. Ziamara, thank you very much again.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I'm looking forward to continuing the conversation with some of my fellow panelists here as well.
Jeffrey Wright, fellow Chicagoan. I'm a Darden MBA, so we'll go to school on that. We'll wrestle that out together when we see each other. Thank you so much. It was great meeting you.
Thank you, Dave. And I know I can be a little bit animated and direct, so hopefully I'll get invited back to the next one. We'll see.
Look, I'm sorry, but yes, you can be animated direct, but nobody rivals Melinda Emerson for animated and direct. Thank you, small biz lady. Thank you, my friend. Appreciate you doing what you do so well.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for bringing this conversation. I mean, this is a courageous conversation we're having here, and so I applaud you, Dave, for your leadership and all of the things that you do for the B2SMB Institute. So thank you.
Thank you.